Welcome to the latest edition of the London Bus Museum Winter Refresh Update with your chairman, Leon Daniels.
So welcome to episode 4. Now, as you know, we've been in a much tougher lockdown since the beginning of January, so not so much to report at the museum, but we have made some progress, which I hope you'll enjoy seeing. We got the vehicles back in for Christmas. Those that were parked outside after Christmas, we were able to put them back outside again while we carried on with the work that's going on inside the museum for the museum refresh. These drapes, which we used to have, are being carefully stored. Some of them will continue to be used in a different way. So we do have to get the canteen trailer into its proper place. So one of the things that is difficult these days is that petrol goes off very quickly. So this canteen trailer is making hard work of starting. These days with petrol, the ethanol in it means that it has a life expectancy of maybe 3 months before it's almost unusable. So we have to try and find sources of ethanol free or low ethanol petrol. But here we're resorting, as you can see, to getting the canteen trailer started using the forklift truck in the way that we've become used to. Anyway, she's running now, which is good. And I was really pleased to see this. I'm sure you are as well, because not very often you get to see the canteen trailer moving under its own power. We did a couple of trips up and down the finishing straight just to give it a chance to stretch its legs a bit, and then brought it back in. So I love this. Not very often you get to see the canteen trailer in action, driven by Ian Reddick there, and just about now to go into the museum. It's got a new position, you'll see it shortly, and on this beautiful winter's bright sunshine, in she went to take up her new location. So after a bit of manoeuvring, there she is, now in her final resting place for the new display. There'll be a new set of steps that Derek Hanlon, who made the previous set, is just modifying so it can have an up and a down, a one-way through. That's the final position now for the canteen trailer, which just is going to look really very good there by the doors. So some other movements going on. RT4779 had to go out and to the workshop. So there we are, being very careful not to drive over the very special drapes that we need for the new part of the exhibition. And now it came to moving the NS. A little bit tricky, but thank goodness for the forklift truck. Some delicate parts underneath the NS, but just able to just shift it over a bit in order to get ready for the proper move into its place, which took a long time, so we speeded it up. The last few inches we had to do, of course, with the forklift, just get it closer to the workshop doors, just move it over a little bit. Unfortunately, these old vehicles are very light, so it's not too difficult to move them under these conditions, very carefully and very slowly, as they say with the forklift. We're going to have a black roadway through the museum from one set of shutters to the other. This was the test just to see how it worked. It was too cold. It didn't work. We're going to have to try it again, but that's going to be the colour of the roadway between the these shutters and the other shutters at the other end. So here we are now in the war hall. Some work going on at the far end by the shop. The STL 2093 is in its proper place. You'll come from the rear, see the platform, and then towards the front. This will all be dark. It'll have a special floor. So here's a new innovation, thanks to the crowdfunding that Simon Douglas Lane and Richard Hastings organised for us and some donations. We now have these fully automatic sensitive doors which we can open and close. This will make life so much easier for people with disabilities, including those in wheelchairs, and of course so much easier for our stewards, many of whom have to operate the doors manually. And there's the shop counter starting to take shape. It's moved into the corner. That's the same counter that was there before. It's been raised up so that the staff at the counter don't get quite so cold in the winter from the cold coming out through the floor. So that's the shop taking place. As I said, we've got some vehicles outside still, just while we continue to move things around inside now that the worst of the weather hopefully has gone. And we have had one vehicle movement, and that is M6. So M6 is being retired from the main display, and here is on its way to North Chapel. So it won't be part of the new display. It's being replaced by WVL1, which is currently at H&D trim, being painted and prepared, all courtesy of the generosity of Go Ahead. Thanks everybody there. Okay, so now it was time for the heavy mob. This is the old London Transport AEC militant 1456 MR, which is also a Brooklands resident, and we needed it in to do some heavy work. So the lovely sound of its beautiful AEC engine as we come to move the KType chassis off from its temporary store on top of these containers and move into the museum for its new display. Really nice to see the militant being used for its proper job. As you can see, stabilizers are out and it's a fabulous crane making easy work of moving the K-type chassis ready to go into the museum properly. So the militant team being very, very careful with this priceless K-type chassis, gently lowering it down onto the ground, ready then to move inside the museum. So it's all hands to the pump now, volunteers from all around the museum. Now man-handling the K-type chassis, manually steering it into the museum, ready for its display. can see in the background, Canteen trailer in its proper place. The ambulance will be the other way round when it comes to display. And then in the distance, you can see NS174 in its proper place. So now the chassis is just coming into a spot where shortly we can pick it up again with the Militant. So just before we move the KType, we've got one other job which we have to do. So here comes the Militant now, reversing in to the main hall, because we wanted to do something different with the RT chassis. So RT2213 chassis has been on display, and it's definitely part of the new display. But we wanted to tilt it so people can see more easily what's going on in the chassis. So having done a bit of preparatory work, we brought in the Militant, and two specially built axle stands from the workshop have gone under the offside, so now the RT chassis is tilted over. Now it's much easier to see the gearbox and the prop shaft and the diff and so on. So that'll make a really interesting display. And now we hoisted the KType chassis above it. So we have the RT chassis and the KType chassis, one above the other. So now, having got it roughly into the right place, we are now just making sure that it's exactly at the right angle and the right distance from the wall. This took a really long time to do because this is a one chance to get this right. Don't worry about the Alden Works sign. I know it looks like it's covered up, but it's going to go higher at a later stage, so don't worry about that. So there we are, just by trial and error, just with the Militant taking the strain, we're just shortening and lengthening the chains that are hanging from the ceiling trusses just to get it at exactly the right angle. This took most of the afternoon. In fact, here's a speeded up version of all of the adjustments that we were making during the course of this, just to get it into exactly the right place. Now look, Militant's released, out of the way, KType chassis in its proper place. So here it is now. This is what it's going to look like. Of course, there'll be some display boards telling you what's going on. The Alden Works sign will be higher. Don't worry about that. So that was the Militant's job done for the day. What really great experience to see it in action, doing the sorts of things that we always wanted to do. And we just stopped for a moment to listen to that beautiful AEC engine inside the museum. (1456 MR there, just left inside the shed for one last time as part of this refresh, and we're really grateful for that. So this has been the London Bus Museum Refresh, episode 4. There's lots going on, and hopefully we'll have some news soon about when it might be possible for the museum to reopen. So in the meantime, thanks very much for joining us. Thank you for all of your support, and we look forward to seeing you back in the museum sometime soon in 2021.